Welcome to New Zealand, a place completely separated from everywhere else in the world, and also a place that commonly gets confused with Australia. If you don't know already, we are not the same. Now, as most of my audience is not from New Zealand, I thought I'd make a video sharing with you guys what it's like to be a gamer living in New Zealand. You know what, let's start with the positives. Not that there is that many, but hey. Number one, we often get new game releases first in New Zealand before anyone else in the world. And this is actually pretty cool, but the reason for this is New Zealand is actually pretty much at the front of all the time zones. So basically, New Year's happens to us first. We are in the future. But this is quite cool because I remember, especially growing up, when the new Call of Duty would come out or whatever, we could actually play it first because a lot of games actually come out at different times per country. So they might do it at midnight, for example, but it'll be midnight for that specific country. So this means if like the new COD, for example, comes out at midnight for New Zealand, we're going to be able to play it first compared to people, say, in the US who get it at midnight their time. In a way, we're playing it before anyone else in the world. Number two, another positive of being a gamer in New Zealand is the friends you make through gaming are actually a lot more likely to become real life friends. Because New Zealand is so small, if you're gaming and you just play in a random lobby and you talk in voice chat or whatever, or you join someone's party, there's a pretty decent chance they might actually live somewhere close to where you are. Way back in the day when I was still in school, I was playing, I think it was GTA 5, and there was maybe like 2 or 3 of us and we were doing a heist. And of course, back in the OG days of GTA Online, you had to have a full 4-player team to actually start a heist. You couldn't do it with less than that. So we were just inviting randoms because we didn't have anyone to play with. So I think we just needed one person to join us, just a random. And we were obviously thinking, oh well, this is not going to go well. You know how it is when you invite a random to your game. You just don't expect them to perform well. Especially a lot of the time you can't even talk to them. They might not have a mic, and then you're missing out on the comms as well. Anyway, we invite this random to the game, and he's actually talking in game chat. We left our party, we joined game chat. To make a long story short, we became really good friends, really cool guy. We played heist with him and he went on to become a really good mate of ours. But not just this, we actually ended up becoming friends with one of his other schoolmates. So basically, his friend was now our friend. And you know what, to make it easy, let's just call him Jim. Good old Jim. So we became friends with Jim now. Now, Jim was actually planning on moving lower in the North Island in New Zealand to study because where he was from, there's basically no institutes to study at. And I just pitched the idea to him. I'm like, you know what, bro? Why don't you come live with me, study in Palmerston North, where I'm from? I didn't actually think, it would happen, but it actually did. He was keen as. So he lived with me for like a whole year, and we were honestly really good friends, and it was such a cool experience. But this is kind of just an example of how if you make friends through gaming, a lot of the time they can actually end up becoming friends in real life, as opposed to somewhere, I don't know, like in the US, you're going to run into a lot more people that are a lot further away from you just because there's so many people. Whereas New Zealand, it's not massive, it's really small compared to other countries. And we might also play with people in Australia, but there's a lot more chance you'll also be playing with people in New Zealand as well. So pretty cool benefit. And the last positive I've got, now honestly, trust me, I did try and think of a lot of positives, but this is kind of all I got. But the last positive of being a gamer in New Zealand is it's actually less likely to experience player count, like server connection issues with big games on release, because the servers just don't have as many people playing on them. So if it's a game like, for example, when GTA 5 came out, when the online aspect of the game came out, I don't know if you guys remember, but the servers were absolutely terrible, and there was such a massive demand being put on the servers from all the players that it basically ended up with the game not working. People couldn't even load into online. But here in New Zealand, I actually remember when GTA Online came out, and I don't even think I had any server related issues at all playing online, just because there's less people in New Zealand. And to be fair, I was actually playing in lobbies with people from overseas as well, like even in Europe, but most of the time it was people in New Zealand or Australia that I was playing with. So less demand being put on the servers. It's not really like a massive positive though, because it's kind of like in rare circumstances, but it's a positive nonetheless. And I thought, you know what, I don't want to make it too much about the negative, so I've got to be honest. Now, quick disclaimer, this is not me complaining about being a gamer in New Zealand. This is simply me just highlighting some of the common problems that exist as a gamer in New Zealand. Anyway, that being said, let's get into the negatives, and spoiler alert, there's quite a bit. The first one is it's impossible to find any lobbies on old games, especially on console. So I'm a console player, and I've made it known before that Call of Duty Black Ops 3 is my favorite Call of Duty. And that game's basically ancient now, right? But, you know, there's been the odd times when I've tried to load up the game and like find a lobby, or even just a couple of mates and I, you know, why not? Let's just see if there's anyone playing multiplayer. Nothing. Dead. There's not one lobby you can find. It's honestly like never gonna happen. There might be the rare occurrence when you might find a game after like 5 minutes of trying on a good day. You know, you just can't really predict it, but it's basically impossible. And this is really sad because I love that game so much. It was my favorite COD, and I can't even continue to play it really unless I just do custom games or zombies with friends, or if I had like 11 mates playing, then we could do like a public match, but that's just not going to happen. That's just kind of an example of old games. If you want to play, you can't really do that. So a little bit guttering, because I know I've seen a lot of people in the US, they'll come back to old games and you can still find full lobbies. It's crazy. So I was even watching, I think, Merc Music the other day, and he went back onto, I think it was Black Ops 4, and he even found a game of Blackout, and I was like, what? That's insane. Now, to be fair, there are some games where you can actually like pick your servers, or you can still play with people outside of New Zealand and Australia, which is fair enough. But this also leads me into the next negative of being a gamer in New Zealand, and that's that the connection or ping is terrible when playing with people outside of New Zealand and Australia. And it's just because we're so far away from like every other country in the world. If we do find a lobby, obviously it won't be like a New Zealand hosted lobby, but if we do find a lobby where the server's hosted somewhere else in the world, our ping is going to be terrible. You can't even compete, especially for like, you know, first person shooters, those kinds of games. You're going to be playing at a massive disadvantage, and it definitely makes things hard. And another negative, and this actually kind of ties in with the next negative, and that's that our internet speeds are absolutely crap compared to overseas like the US and everything. Now, I will admit, New Zealand has come a long way. We used to be pretty bad with our internet speeds, but now we've got fiber, obviously. We've had that for a long time, but the top of the top is probably nothing compared to the US. So I'll put on screen a few examples of the typical kind of internet speeds here. So these are like the typical kind of speeds you can expect to get on a standard internet plan here. Now, I did say that it has come a long way. So you can actually get some really good fiber speeds here in New Zealand, but you have to pay a lot for it. Whereas I feel like overseas, the prices aren't actually as bad. I know in Australia, it's actually pretty bad. It might even be worse than New Zealand, but you know, US, UK, I think you guys have it a lot better with your internet speeds, especially the price of it as well. So I think we've got a lot of catching up to do. Actually, another negative, I just thought of this now, it's not even on my list, but the internet isn't as like widely available in New Zealand as it is overseas. We don't even have like 4G and all of that in the rural areas, so we've still got a long way to go. So this means that people that live in the countryside, like on farms and in rural areas, basically have no access to playing online, or if they do, it's on very terrible internet, like the connection is horrible. So we've got a lot of catching up to do with our internet speeds. The next negative is when gaming events happen, especially like outside of New Zealand, and as well as DLCs and stuff, they go live at the least convenient times for us. So an example of this was actually with the Xbox game showcase on the 9th of June. Now for us, this was actually the 10th of June for New Zealand, but because it was obviously like a US event, the time for us in New Zealand was shocking when the showcase went live. So it went live for us at 5 AM on the 10th of June, which is like terrible because I'm not getting up at 5 AM to watch that. And if I did, it's very inconvenient. Whereas a lot of the time, you know, in the US, it's at a great time because it's obviously a US hosted event. they want more people watching. And this is the same for DLCs and stuff. Like if they come out, you know, early hours of the morning for New Zealand, it's like the perfect time in the US. Not a massive one, but it's still a little bit annoying because, you know, there's nothing like watching something live. Another negative of being a gamer in New Zealand is there's actually a bit of a stigma with gaming being bad for you. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a stigma worldwide with like gaming always being known as like, you know, if you're a gamer, you're a loser kind of thing in some places around the world. Now, obviously, we've come a long way with the stigma being removed and gaming is a lot more like socially acceptable. But in New Zealand, it's actually still pretty behind because we've got a lot of the old timers and they just don't understand it. There's a lot more that traditional, you know, you got to be outside, a little bit of that. Like I said, it has gotten better. The gaming industry in New Zealand has actually come up like a lot, but nonetheless, there is a little bit of a stigma still with gaming in New Zealand being a kind of like loser thing, I guess, to do. Whereas I know in the US, it's a lot more socially acceptable. But hey, we're getting there. Now, the next negative is it's also hard to find friends in real life that also have the same interest in gaming. Because like I was saying, there's a little bit of that stigma still with gaming. So I think chances are if I was to, you know, make friends with someone in real life, the chances of them being a gamer might not be as high as if I lived somewhere in like the US, for example. Now, obviously, if I'm going to be friends with them, they probably will be a gamer because that's the kind of person I would be friends with, or someone that shares other common interests of mine. But yeah, just because there's less gamers in New Zealand, it can be a little bit hard, I think, in that regard. Okay, the last negative, now this one was mentioned earlier in the actual intro of this video, but everyone loves to think for some reason that New Zealand and Australia are in the same place. They are not the same country. They are not in the same place. So New Zealand is a very small country compared to Australia, and it's just next to Australia. It's not the same country. You guys in the US will be laughing at how small we are. I think there's like 5 million people in New Zealand, which is nothing for you guys, but quite a lot for us. So yeah, that's a little bit of an insight as to what life is like as a gamer in New Zealand. And there are a lot of negatives, but this isn't me trying to complain. This is just kind of what it's like. And I do love the fact that the gaming industry has increased like significantly in New Zealand over the past 10 years. Heaps. So it's really cool. I'm really happy about that. And it's definitely a lot more socially acceptable to be a gamer in New Zealand. But I thought it just might be an interesting video for you guys that live overseas in the US or UK, just to have a bit of insight what it's like to live on the other side of the world. I'd love to know from you guys though, where are you located in the world? And do you share any of these common problems I have, or are you living the dream? If you guys did enjoy this video, let me know by dropping me a comment below and liking the video. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.